So I'm pleased now to move on to our next panel, which is a directional panel, directional fashion. And this is close to my heart. So Co is a network of entrepreneurs, professionals, and business owners. And for those of you building your own brands or running a growing business, combining the great product with sustainable sourcing practices, marketing, and doing all of this with limited funds can seem really challenging. So in this panel, we bring together 3 speakers who've built successful brands from scratch, and we're delving into how they've done it. What are the challenges they've overcome and how they've overcome them. So in today's session, I'm really pleased to say that we have 3 speakers. I see that Molly's in the room, and I hope we can hear from her because I know there is currently a power outage in Ghana where she's calling in from. But we have Molly Kyo, co-founder of Oseduro, one of the most exciting brands, I think, that has come out of Africa, founded in 2011. And they've grown the label with a bit of a cult following, and over 1 million in sales every year, worn by Michelle Obama. They've scaled up artisanal techniques. We also have Bav Taylor, who's the founder of Bav Taylor, since 2015, been pioneering in the creation of exquisite fashion collections, sustainable and fair trade fabrics, and done what many have tried and many have failed, to bring together interesting design with limited assets and budget and made it a success. And finally, we also have Cameron Saul, co-founder of Bottle Top, who's joining us from the Bottle Top brand, which was founded in 2002. Mission to use sustainable luxury fashion to alleviate poverty, so right at the heart of the business, in areas including sub-Saharan Africa, Brazil, and Nepal. And they've achieved phenomenal success. Flagship store in Regent Street and celebrity ambassadors from David Beckham to Naomi Campbell. So looking forward to hearing from each of you. If we could start with Molly, I'm going to try and see if we can hear from you. I'm hoping you're able to come in. And if you'd like to unmute yourself, we'd love to hear a little bit more about Oseduro. Well,
sure.
Yes,
thank you.
Here. Wonderful to have you.
Yeah, Oseduro really started out as kind of an exploration between my business partner and I. Yeah, people often ask us how we ended up in Ghana, and I'd come here to visit a friend, and we were both already in the industry, and she got really excited about the textiles. So she asked me to come back and kind of see what would come of a trip. So yeah, we made our first trip here in 2009, and we slowly started designing and figuring out what we were doing and understanding the limitations of the place, and building relationships with dyers and understanding who our customers were. And we grew very slowly until about 20 ourselves. And then in 2017, we made a big shift away from focusing on wholesale, a lot more on direct to customer through our website. And that was that made a big difference for us. And then in 2019, we started paying for marketing, which was also a big shift and made a big difference. Yeah, but our model is essentially that we do hand production. Almost everything we do is hand dyed in Ghana. Everything is small scale, tailor sewn in Ghana. And the majority of our sales are through our website. About 10% of our annual sales are wholesale to stores. Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. I wondered if you could dive into some of the products. So we can see some on the screen here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about these and why they've, how you produce them and why they've been successful?
Yeah. So we mostly focus on a technique called batik, which involves a wax resist So for instance, the dress in the middle would be dyed purple, and then wax would be applied, and then it would be over dyed black. And then the wax would be rinsed out. So it's like a negative kind of design process. The garment on the far left, there isn't actually a wax resist used, it's hand painted on the fabric. So the fabric is laid out on the ground, and like the colors are kind of splashed on it by the dyers. And when we first started working here, we were buying wax prints, we were looking at hand woven, we were doing a lot of different things. And we found that a lot of other hand textiles that we were excited about, it was hard to make it, it was hard for it to be reliable. And the batik is also hard for it to be reliable. The weather when it's being done affects it. But it kind of felt like the most interesting and reliable option. So we started to focus more and more on that. And what we changed about it was that we brought in other fabrics. So most of the batikers here use pretty heavy cottons. And we started bringing in lighter weight silks and rayons and blends, and seeing if we could figure out how to do the batik on these fabrics, which we felt like our Western market would respond better to. So it's really been kind of a blend of what we were used to and what we were finding. And for a long time, we found that really simple dresses were what people were excited about, in this kind of bright colors. I think that was kind of the easiest thing for our customer to understand how to wear it. And in the last couple of years, we've also realized that jumpsuits do really, really well, basically single garment dressing. So these are 3 examples of, easy fits that are like a bold statement. I mean, what we basically, the line I kind of often say is, you should be able to wear it to a wedding and then sleep on a couch in it that night, and then get up in the morning and go to the brunch and feel good in this outfit in all 3 of those occasions. It should be super comfortable, but also kind of a statement piece. And these are three styles that sell very well, that I think like accomplish those objectives.
Thank you. Do you want to talk a little bit to your pivot from wholesale? Because I remember a lot of this, you were telling me earlier, is all about being responsive to the customer, and how you've developed ways of being more responsive. What was behind that pivot?
We kind of knew that fall didn't do as well for us as spring. And we had long kind of been told that the traditional model is you need bigger sales. You need to get some big department stores to buy from you. You need volume. And so we kind of felt like we were like, fighting our way uphill on that. And our model is such that it's really hard to do high volumes. And so I took a maternity leave in fall of 2017, and we just decided to skip wholesale for a season. We're like, we don't make a lot of money. Let's just focus on retail. And when we looked back at the numbers, we were like, wait a minute, this makes far more sense. So what we decided to do from there, and I don't know how many other people do this, but it has worked quite well for us. We put the upcoming season online on a password protected site about 3 months before we're ready to start shipping the first delivery, and stores have access to it and they can purchase it outright at wholesale prices. So they have to pay 100% upfront, and we're not at market. They have to save budget for us. But it took a lot of the risk away for us. And it meant that we could be a lot more efficient and a lot more reactive to customers. And we lost most of our wholesale accounts when we did that. And we're now back up to almost what we had before we made that switch.
Amazing. And then coming to a proven product. So, because a lot of what you do is getting that product market fit. It's a process, isn't it? I mean, how do you manage the production side of that? To what sort of numbers are you looking at to achieve test a product to see if it's going to work for you?
I mean, it's a kind of a moving target. We really we've found that by focusing on the website, we can really respond to customers. We also can keep a style going. So our goal is the first production of a style, we want to make enough, just enough that can keep it in, if it's a hit, we can keep it in stock until we can reproduce it. And right now, if typically we'll launch a new style in 3 or 4 colors, and the bare minimum we would produce would be 40 or 50 units per color. If we feel more confident about it, it's more like 100. And that right now seems to be enough to kind of get us through to a reproduction. A full cycle from starting the process to finishing a production for us is 8 or 9 weeks. The hand dyeing is really not a fast process and not one that we want to rush. So we kind of have to estimate. It's definitely a guess always, but that's kind of the ballpark right now.
And going back to the marketing, you mentioned that you moved to paid marketing. How has that worked for you, and any recommendations on that side for other people in the room?
I think that we found a really wonderful team. They really listen to what we're okay with and what we're not okay with. I think all of our organic growth early on, and also all of our time with wholesalers, I will have to say, like, not to completely just rag on wholesale accounts, because I think that they do a huge amount of marketing for brands that you don't pay for. And I think that really gave us a foundation. But once we started doing it, we realized that it kind of expanded who our customer was, which meant that there were different styles that we could try. Like the design could also expand a little bit, which has been really fun to kind of get a slightly different customer. And it also, there's other nice things about just being a little bit bigger. It's like we have more feedback. We have a better sense of how many people something fits. We have like more data, basically, which has been really, really helpful with improving production, which is marketing. But I think that, I think that it's not something to do until you're ready to do it. And I think that finding the right fit, we focus on social media ads almost only. And I think, figuring out who you're targeting and what you're trying to convey to them is also crucial.
How about the pricing side, getting that right? Again, as we heard from Orbaz, the cost of doing things well, sustainably, and in a way that supports the people behind the product is higher. How do you manage that and remain competitive with the product?
Yeah, it's I feel like with all these questions, I'm like, we just constantly look at it like we're just juggling eternally. There's almost nothing that we're like, okay, we've solved that. It's like everything's always being adjusted. A lot of our inputs vary a lot because inflation is a big issue in Ghana. And so we have to kind of figure out how to anticipate that, how to price around it. We often peg things to the dollar with vendors here. It's more secure for both them and us. And we have our costing formula that we use, and I think it's easy to leave things out of the costing, like shipping, for instance. Are you going to factor that in? What about damages? Are you going to factor that in? There's a lot of stuff that I feel like initially we didn't really think to include, and we've over time started to add in. But I think as far as working with vendors here, it's also kind of a constant conversation. With the boutiquers, their inputs are things like water and fuel, and those prices for those things fluctuate directly with inflation of currency. And so it's a constant conversation about, are you sure your overhead's getting met with them?
Thank you. One last before we move on to Bev, and we will try and get some time in for questions from the audience as well. So if you have questions for any of the panelists in this session, please post them now. I find sometimes we get the questions just too late for me to be able to answer them. So please post them now. So my final one is, you've been doing this for 10 years, more than that. What are your, if you were to pick 3 things that you would have known at the beginning of that process that might be useful to those in the room, what would they be? What are your kind of key recommendations for others?
Ooh, get ready to work very hard. Yeah, I think often people underestimate like the just pure elbow grease that really goes into building something, especially if you're self-funded like we have been. You really have to be patient and build slowly and be strategic and respond to what works and what doesn't work. And just, yeah, there were so many times when we wanted to quit. Another thing that I would add is I think it's important to be very thoughtful about your position. So for my business partner and I, we are privileged white women operating in a developing country, for lack of a better term. And we bring a lot of privilege into our processes, and we can use that for good, as long as we're aware of it. And I think when we started, we weren't particularly aware of kind of the context. And now the conversation in this industry has really shifted, and we're much more kind of conscious of what the implications are of us being where we are and doing what we're doing. With ethical design, there's a lot of people from the West working in the global South. And I think we all can kind of just remain very careful about what our impact is. And the third thing I would say that has been huge for us is just building healthy relationships with people, especially when you're doing something so specialized. It's all about finding people that you communicate well with, finding people who you kind of enjoy the process together. And so I think really building relationships has been the most instrumental thing for us.
Thank you so much. I think we've got a lot more to learn from you. We'll hopefully have time for a few more questions. But I'm now going to pass over to Melanie, who's going to interview Bav Taylor. So handing over to you, Melanie.
Great, thanks, Tamsin. And yeah, so Bav, lovely to have you joining us this afternoon. I wanted to start by asking you to tell us a little bit about your best-selling products. So we've got the Lockyer Escape Trouser and the Lockyer Cube shirt here on the screen. So can you start by telling us, a bit about the history of these 2 products?
Hi, Melanie. Can you guys see me okay?
Yep, loud and clear. I can see you perfectly well. Thanks.
So I, just a bit of history. So I founded the company in 2013. And the first thing I did was buy my domain. And the second thing I did was sign up to become a member of Co. So Co has been a very important part of my journey, from which I actually built my conscious sustainability manifesto, which was really the backbone of my business. And then when I launched the Lockyer Escape Trousers in, I think, the summer of 2018, the style was actually inspired by my mum's saris, like she'd have the pleat detail at the front. And when I launched the trousers, I have to say that I didn't get a lot of feedback, but I felt that it was a product that was going to function. So one of the things that I must say is, if you don't get the feedback, when you're trying to launch a product in one way, it doesn't mean that it's a product that's not going to work. I'd launched it just with wholesale at that time, and then I transferred and I focused it on the final client, and it was with the final clients that even today I get so much feedback. I have clients that are coming back to me asking me, do you have it in another material? Can I have like a 3/4 version? Last year, I launched my holistic sphere. So I've got a range of Shanti wellness pieces like Athflow yoga wear, and I actually created some joggers from it. So just adapting the model, which is a model that works perfectly for all forms. And I have to say, it is a very gender neutral piece as well. So that has really functioned, I would have to say, as a bestseller. It's always reintroduced into the collection. Yeah. And then moving on to the Lock Your Cube shirt. So I launched that with my debut collection in 2015. And here you can actually see a picture of the nettle version. And this was probably, together with my Japanese organza, one of the biggest sellers, because at that time when I'd launched it, nettle was still a very new sustainable fabric. Not a lot of people knew about it. And it's got a lot of wellness benefits as well. So, I have returning clients that are asking me, are you able to produce another shirt, maybe, with long sleeves or with like some kind of collar detail. So still key products, which are really the core of my brand.
And you mentioned there about the importance of feedback, and initially you didn't have that feedback, but that came later. Now it sounds like you have a very close relationship with your client base, and I wondered if you could tell us a bit about how you cultivated that fan base, if you like, and how you get that feedback and kind of put that back into product development.
Well, the first thing I did was I based my whole business on wholesale at the beginning, and then just pre-pandemic as well, I started shifting it. And what I used to do was during the fashion weeks, I'd get a lot of people to try the product on. So people with different forms, different genders. And it was from then that I realized that this could be a key product. So I need to do some investment, do a mini production and get it out to the final client. And that's how I managed to get my feedback. So, client is key. So for any brand, they need to be client-centric, honestly, because they are the ones that are going to help build your business.
Just building on that question, that sense of like who your target audience is your current target audience, your current fan base, the same as what you imagined? Did you set out and create a kind of a target audience profile and a kind of marketing fashion, or was it not like that?
Yeah, I think I remember one of my first brand profiles, and my target audience was, typical at that stage. It was, millennials. So it was, the millennials, women. I never really thought that I would focus on menswear, even though my aesthetic is very, gender neutral. Mm-hmm. But the focus was always women. And now I have to say that it's completely shifted. So if someone asks me who my target client is, it's not male or female, and there's definitely no age. Like I call them the generationalist client, because they're clients that are very conscious in their everyday living, and they obviously they seek conscious products, something that's very holistic and that can be integrated into their own lifestyle, I would say.
And in terms of that, getting that product market fit right, and you've gone into some detail about the trousers in particular, is there anything else that you'd put that down to? So you've obviously iterated, you've got feedback, you've got different fabrics, and you've got that, you're giving the customer what they want. But has there been anything else that's helped you in terms of achieving that product market fit?
Comfort. So for sure, I always make sure that I test the product on myself first. Mm-hmm. And just in general, like most of the products that you see within each of my collection, you'll probably notice that they're never like skinny fit. There's always room for movement. And this is so that the skin is able to breathe, but also because it allows a lot of different forms to be able to fit that size. Like I have, for example, a sample size 8 that can fit someone who is a size 6 to someone who the other day is a size 12. So it allows a lot of flexibility in terms of fits. Of course, the look is going to be different, but as long as that look is fine for the client, it works perfectly.
And some of the fabrics that you've mentioned, working with like nettle, I know you've worked with recycled fish skins. I mean, they're really, really innovative, intriguing kind of fabrics. And I wondered, in terms of production, what has there been any? Did you ever have any pushback in terms of trying to find an ethical producer that's willing to work with these new fabrics?
To be honest, I've never had any problems finding producers. I've always had, like, my current producer, he'll always be like, oh my gosh, what is this new fabric that you're making? Great. So I remember, I've got in the picture there, I don't know if you can see it, but there's the clutch made of bee leaf, which is a wonderful, wonderful new innovative leather alternative, which is actually an elephant ear plant leaf. And when I presented that to my supplier, he was like, what am I going to do with that?
That's brilliant. I mean, I've seen the bee leaf at the sustainable angles, future fashion. Yeah, I mean, it is literally a giant leaf, isn't it? And I've seen it. You also created a top out of it as well as the bags. I mean, how easy is it as a material to work with?
It's very easy because it's extremely supple, and I actually use the clutch myself. So I tried to practically destroy it to see its wear and tear, and it is very, very easy to use. A pleasure to work with, honestly.
That's good for anyone else who might be interested. It's definitely worth checking out as an alternative, a kind of sustainable vegan alternative to leather. And in terms of the impact, can you share any impacts that these kind of bestsellers have given you as a business? Yeah.
So I think, especially for the Lock Your Escape trousers, because I was able to develop it in my Shanti Wellness collection, part of my brand is I collaborate. I've got an artisanal lab platform which allows me to collaborate and showcase artisans from around the world. So with all of my Athflow wear, I'm collaborating with Capda, which is it's a British London-based company who do all of their production in India, supporting the women artisans there. And with them, I'm developing the new set of wellness gear, which is going to be integrating a new adaptation of the Lock Your Escape trousers. So, when you have the bestsellers, it allows you to invest in developing your bestsellers, and creating new products. And then also, of course, part of my conscious manifesto was always to provide social contribution. So, I'm a member of various organizations, and one in particular just recently, as of last week when it was World Soil Day, I'm part of, we've joined forces to become part of a movement called Conscious Planet, launched by the Isha Foundation, the Sadhguru's Isha Foundation. And it's really a movement to showcase and generate awareness about the importance of regenerating soil. Like all of the issues that we're having at the moment, if we just focused on, choosing the materials accordingly, making sure that the soil that we're using is getting revitalized, we could really eliminate a lot of the global issues that are happening today. So, please, all of you, go and, support the project and just educate yourselves about what, when you make a purchase, what the impact is of that product. And I think we all need to continue educating ourselves, and that's what what I try to do. That's what I'm doing here today, what I do when I'm teaching as well. So
thanks for the heads up there, Bab. It's a good tip for anyone else who has a brand who's listening in. And I think When it comes to, you mentioned the pivot you made, and obviously we heard from Molly before, between wholesale and direct to consumer, and I wondered if I could just pick up on that, because we've heard a lot about wholesale and that people are moving away and wanting to try and, to build brand success through direct to consumer. And I wondered, if you could tell us a bit about how that's been for you as a brand, and any other tips that you could give anyone else listening in.
Okay, I think the most important thing is to have a balance. If I was able to change one thing, go back in time, it would be to not have put all my eggs in one basket and focused on wholesale. It's all very exciting, wanting to be part of Fashion Week and, showcasing to the journalists and getting the buyers, the top department stores coming to see your collection. But there comes a point in time when, especially when you're maturing, that you want to have that direct relationship with the customer, because they're the ones that are going to really drive your business. So my advice would be to establish a good base between wholesale and B2C. So make sure that you've got your e-commerce, you organize your trunk shows or whatever you want to do to have that direct to consumer relationship. And then of course focus on where you aspire to be in terms of wholesale. So I speak about me, I don't dream of being like everywhere. It's just being in the key, global distribution markets, with the key retailers, and slowly try to achieve it. But you need to gain awareness through your direct relationships with your clients, who will generate awareness, generate your sales, and that will allow you to be able to be seen and be approached by these huge department stores.
So is that closeness to that close relationship that you have with your client base that you get from the direct to consumer? Would you say that's the largest benefit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think I've got time for just one more question. Is that right, Tamsin? I'm just checking in. Okay, so I just wanted to ask if you had any tips for other fashion professionals who are listening in on what it takes to create a successful, sustainable product. So what you think makes, and also what think would make a difference to the industry if fashion companies committed to creating more sustainable products.
Well, I think first and foremost, you have to be agile to change, especially, what's happened in the last 18 months. So try and build a business model which allows you to be flexible. You may have thought, you're going to start, creating one type of product or having, a total look collection, but then you've realized that some items aren't working. So you need to focus on your best sellers, or, just be a brand that's making coats or bags or just hats or whatever it may be. Flexibility is key. And if you see that a product's working, don't just stop there. Try, and it's not about, presenting so many pieces. It's about just trying to see and be clever, testing the market, and having a handful of key products that are going to generate your business, generate awareness, and generate that confidence, let's say, for those huge global retailers to approach you and think, no, now this brand is in the right space for us to invest in him or her.
Thank you so much, Bav, for all those wonderful insights. Really fascinating to hear about your brand and all the interesting work that you're doing. I know that we're joined by Cameron, so I'm going to pass back over to Tamsin. Hi, Cameron. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to pass back over to Tamsin.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Melanie. And thank you, Bav. Fascinating. And it's wonderful to have you in the room, Cameron. I know that you've got a very busy schedule. So really appreciate that you can make it today. And I've watched,
honored to be with you.
Oh, wonderful. I've watched your product grow from a very basic steel frame box almost with bottle tops fix to it, to a really stunning product that you have today. Do you want to give us a little background to your business and your products now?
Sure, thanks, Tamsin. So yeah, it's actually our 20th anniversary next year, so it really has been quite a journey, and but really with absolutely the same mission and heart of everything that we do and behind everything that we do. And but as you say, and I'm touched that you remember our original boxy bottle top bag, which we're actually experimenting with doing a little bit of a reboot and refresh of for next year, because I think it might trend well with where we're seeing design. But essentially, I was working volunteering in East Africa, was deeply inspired by the culture, by the community, by the young people that we were working with, and by the extraordinary plethora of artistry and artwork that I saw all around. And the one particular piece that you mentioned, which caught my eye, was the original bottle top bag made from the round tops of glass bottles, a very pop art kind of piece that really just captivated and captured people's imaginations. I brought it back to London, and we launched it through a design collaboration with Mulberry, and it became their best-selling bag globally. But we very deliberately added leather linings that were from waste offcuts from the factory floor to make it more practical and functional, with a more luxurious aesthetic, but really very much paying homage and respect to the original African craft piece that we were dealing with. And I think that kind of cross-cultural conversation has run throughout our entire 20-year journey from a design perspective, in terms of going out and really always looking around the world for the kinds of beautiful, fascinating, oftentimes heritage craft techniques that you will see, or that you can see and you can find, to draw from, and to work then very carefully in partnership with communities to elevate their knowledge and their craft techniques, really supporting what it is that they're doing, but just injecting that that knowledge and understanding of what's happening from a market and design perspective over here, such that we can really develop and sell beautiful products that can deliver a sustainable impact in communities. And our main atelier and training program is in the northeast of Brazil, in Bahia, where we produce the collection of designs. One of my briefcase here. And we started that whole program from the ground up, from scratch, having discovered this sort of gorgeous technique of local women crocheting the ring pulls from drinks cans, totally recycled, and just really being fascinated by that aesthetic, that sort of super lightweight chainmail, sporty eco fabric that they were creating, really just because that was all they had to design with and make with. Obviously, there were strong echoes with what we'd done in East Africa, so it made all sense for us to develop a project, and we did so with a local NGO. So we started our first sessions training local women who were all unemployed, and a number of them coming from quite vulnerable scenarios, and we were working out of a little health center in the favelas, but we just saw how incredibly quickly they learned how the aptitude for the skill and design was amazing. And gradually over the years, we then fine-tuned that. We would send designers from London and Paris to work in very much alongside the team there, as we figured out together how we could do better, how we could evolve it and elevate it. But it was very much always through this lens of, how can we be as useful and respectful as possible to the local culture, to the local community? How can we design in such a way that, we are building for the long term? This was never for us about dropping in and out. It was always about how can we create meaningful impact, and I mean, the Bellani design, which this is actually a new silhouette here that I'm wear testing, but it features our Mistura weave, which is this sort of leather or zero deforestation leather and metal weave that's unique to us. The ring pulls that you see here are all recycled, collected mostly by catadores, who are sort of trash collectors, and so it's a great way for them to earn an income. We pay them per kilo. They bring them to our studio. The women at our studio then go through and painstakingly separate them, sort them, really clean them, clip them. The ones that are too damaged to be used are sent to be recycled. The ones that are in good condition are then polished and filed, and then in this case anodized. We also have different sort of paint finishes. So for us, it was about taking what was originally a sort of a raw metal chainmail aesthetic and turning that into something more elevated. And there was a question that popped in there about the zero deforestation leather. When we were starting to want to look at how we could evolve the collection and make more structured designs, and actually leather was the material that lent itself best to doing so. And we always believed in using leather from the perspective of using a byproduct of the meat and beef industry, and Brazil's the largest in the world. What we didn't know at the time was the negative impact that ranching for beef was having on the Amazon particularly, but also other forest areas. And so with the National Wildlife Federation, we created a pilot program and a training a sort of approach that would enable us to provide complete transparency in sourcing leather and hides that were coming from farms that were proactively protecting the forest and natural ecosystems. It's still a normal leather, so it's and I'll say that we're excited to and believe in moving away from all animal products as soon as possible. But we took the decision at that time to continue to work with a byproduct of the meat industry and drive a broader conversation across the industry about the importance of understanding your sourcing and supply chains, such that as brands, where your skins and your original hides are coming from, to make sure that they're being sourced from tanneries and farms that really are providing proper traceability and sourcing, and so that's been a big program that we've done. But as I say, at the point that there is a biodegradable or plant-based equivalent that isn't plastic-based, we will move away from leather. But I think so. Yeah, the whole program and collection, I mean, I wanted to show you a new design, but also speak to a signature classic for us, which is the Bellani, which was really where we started, almost built the whole program around. And I think it's so important for any designer or brand to just have those absolute staples in your collection that speak to your DNA, that speak to your mission, ideally, and that are both distinguished in the way that the designs are executed, but also can continue to live in your collection season on season, and that you can then refresh, you can design around. And the Bellani for us, it's a great crossbody sort of teardrop silhouette of a bag that can be worn in lots of different ways. It's a wonderful lightweight day bag that comes in just under £200 for the classic, so it's great value. And we've then designed obviously jumbo versions. We've even got a mini version still coming out for spring next year. So I think playing with that, but maintaining, and I think to the last point that was made as I was joining, it's so important not to overstretch yourselves in terms of resources by designing and designing and designing. Obviously, that's the great bit, the creative part of the jigsaw, which is just so wonderful. But honing and honing and honing, I think, is probably more important in terms of the commercial side of the business, whilst balancing that with the right newness in the collection, so that you can continue to experiment, you can continue to drive press and visibility and other excitement, whilst just refreshing those classics and understanding whether a mini version or a jumbo version or a version, in our case, using an anodized finish to the metal or a hand painted finish to the metal will just give it a freshness that will continue to provide that kind of support. So yeah, I've done enough times, and if you want to steer us in another part of our journey.
Yeah, I mean, the common thread that we've seen through the history of the brand, and we see a similar thing with Ray-Ban, who we heard from you earlier, is that you've taken a challenge and turned it into an opportunity through design, and you've seemed to be able to bring the expertise around you to turn that idea into something exquisite. How have you done that? How have you found the people? How does the design work in the business? How do you build your team to deliver on that?
Great questions, and I think it ultimately comes down to wearing many hats. And I wish that we had the breadth and depth still today of team that we would dream of. We're getting there, but it's still, and I think again for any brands that are in earlier stages, you have to be the PR department, you have to be the design team, you have to be the marketing team, you have to be the sourcing and all those things. And that's why you have to absolutely love it. It's so important that you've got the love and the passion for this, because it's hard. But I think for us, and again, I think where we are today in the world and where consumer consciousness is, we've achieved the evolution of our own collection really through this wearing our story on our sleeves. And really wearing the fact that we exist to empower artisans and to create skills and livelihoods through the making of beautiful, sustainable craft. That we exist, to empower our consumers to make more informed and healthy choices in terms of, how we all, take the steps, big and small, to try to gravitate towards a healthier economy and a healthier planet. But that wearing that story in the most creative ways that we can has facilitated collaboration. And I would say collaboration has been fundamental to our journey, because each time we've done a new collaboration, we've kind of built on what we've done previously, but we've then leveraged that to really drive into new territory from a design and aesthetics perspective that oftentimes really moved the needle. So for example, the Mistura weave that we see over here really came out, that was the sort of the output of our collaboration with Narciso Rodriguez here in New York. And that really came about through trial and error. It was like we started off by creating samples with him where we were, developing our sort of crochet silhouette, sort of up until that point, technique. But it just didn't sit right on his very structured geometrical accessory designs. And we were trying to do almost exactly what we've done here in terms of the paneling, but with the softer crochet, and it just didn't work. So we said, okay, we've got to develop a whole new mechanism here that is kind of creating a more structured body and more structured approach to the design. And then actually, interestingly, when the very expensive ateliers in Spain and Italy that he worked with were unable to execute that, we said, okay, we will find the way to do it at our studio in Brazil with all of these incredible women who, were previously unemployed. We just said, we will figure it out. We don't know how, but we will figure it out. And we did. And, I'm so proud that we did, because those women are the arbiters and gatekeepers of that signature material, which has become a staple for us at our more expensive luxury levels. So again, I'd love to say that there's a more systematic approach to it, but it's really just getting out there and trying, and through the use and leveraging of your story and why you exist, the problems that you're solving through your brand and through your supply chains, inspiring people to come on board and to collaborate with you, and using collaboration certainly as a tool for that.
You've touched on it, but can you give us some specifics around the impact you've achieved through your products? Yeah,
I think so. I mean, on a specific to our atelier in Bahia, where we are there, I mean, we have a team of 30. On average, those are, it's predominantly women. We've got about 5 guys, and many of those women have been with us for, well, we started the program in 2005, and we're very fortunate that many of those original gang are still with us. That on average they have families of 4, so we're having a small but really meaningful impact in the local community. They all earn on average 45% more than sort of any well-paid local equivalents. We provide them all with health insurance. So in terms of that, the immediate impact through livelihood creation in Bahia, that's where we are. But we also now have another program in Nepal, in Kathmandu, where we employ 40 women who half of whom have been rescued from human trafficking, the other half who have been rescued from quite vulnerable scenarios in terms of where and how they've been living. And I mean, on the ring pull side, we've salvaged millions and millions of metal ring pulls that would have otherwise ended up in landfill and in the natural environment. In the last year or so, we've actually donated over £1 million through our various programs supporting and driving the development of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We've retrieved over 125,000 kilos of ocean plastic through our Together Band campaign program. We donated over 55,000 face shields through joint fundraising campaigns and projects that we did with the pandemic. We've funded 70,000 meals through our Together Meals program, which has also been a big part of our Together Band initiative, and planted over 20,000 trees. And so all of our work really now is about, and with all of our products, we provide a meal through our Together Meals program, and we plant trees, as well as the impact that's delivered through the materials and the artisan piece. And what we really try to do, and we've still got very much work to do, is be better at just helping people to understand and feel great about the role that they're playing in helping us to drive impact on multiple layers. But it's really been an evolution, and I think we started very much focused on the pure sort of artisan piece and the materials focus and fundraising wherever possible for the health education programs. And then as our work has evolved and we've done sort of broader partnership programs, and we introduced our Together Band campaign with the UN Foundation, we've been able to scale some of that wider impact.
We've got a few minutes left, and I'd love to bring in some of the other speakers. And we'd love to hear your take on the industry and in relation to one thing that you think the audience, that this is all entrepreneurs and business owners, can focus on to make a difference. Very quickly, because I know this is a burning question, if you can answer in a couple of minutes, Cameron, for the audience, before we get into that from Molly and Bav. I'm giving you a few minutes to think about it. Cameron, how do you go about, marketing is obviously a really strong point for you. How do you go about getting people like David Beckham and Ban Ki-moon to back the Together Band campaign?
I think, again, it's a great question, and I wish that there was an easy answer to it. But it's just through living the passion and sharing that with people. But the product and the concept always has to be as strong as the purpose. And I think that was crystal clear to me the moment that we launched the Mulberry Bottle Top campaign in 2002, because at that time there was certainly no shortage of incredible NGOs doing work, but there was no one executing positive, exciting, dynamic and dramatic campaigns that really pushed a positive message about what the impact that people could have through buying and wearing, in this case, a beautiful recycled or waste design. And our that whole approach that we've had now for nearly 20 years, we applied to Together Band through a product that could be as accessible as possible. And the two mini bands, cost £20 for a pair. And that was really as affordable as we could make it, while still raising money for the projects that we wanted to support and having real impact through the supply chain of the making of those bands. And what we knew at the time, we had just been introduced to the UN. Actually, when we very first launched Bottle Top, one of my great surprises and honors was that we had a letter from the former Secretary General of the UN, Kofi Annan, congratulating us on our work and approach with Bottle Top and how different it was to anything he'd ever seen. And so it kind of sowed a seed for me that I was like, I wonder if there's some way that we could work with the UN, but how would you even begin to think about doing that? And then very randomly in 2015, we were launching a collaboration with an amazing Kenyan artist called Wangeshi Mutu, and some folks from the UN came along, and it was just when they were launching the SDG framework. And it just occurred to me that fashion and design has to be involved in blowing out awareness. And so no one really had an awareness of what the goals were at that time. And we just took it upon ourselves to design a set of products that could really help communicate them and empower the public to do so as well. And so I think it was, in terms of the celebrity side of things, I think obviously just the track record that we've built up over the years has meant that people have trusted us to handle their reputation and the execution of their of how they look and how they're positioned in the right way. But it's been baby steps, it really has. Every relationship has been hard fought and hard won. But it is all fueled by the clarity around, why this matters. And I think when the product is strong and the story is equally strong, it's quite hard for people to say no to. But you just have to be very persistent.
Thank you so much. So incredible impact that can be achieved, perseverance and hard work and passion. So handing over to you, Molly, hopefully we can get audio for you still and your power hasn't gone down again. But just really quickly, if you have a tips, I know you've achieved a lot of change through your business as well. Do you have one recommendation for the audience in relation to what fashion businesses can do that will drive change?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I guess the thing that I would say from all the research I've done that I think is important is to, it can be really overwhelming. There's all these, we need to look at labor, and we need to look at dye waste, and we need to look at our fabric waste, and we need to look at our supply chain, and we need to look at shipping. And it can really feel overwhelming, especially if you're small, especially if you're self-funded. And I think a good way to start, which has kind of been a relief for us to understand this, is to decide where you want to focus. Doesn't have to be one area, could be 2 or 3, but whatever you feel like are things that you can tackle, and then really set up measurables for yourself. So and you can publish this. I mean, our experience is that people love information, and you can say, our goals for this year are to do this. And then at the end of that year, you get to say, we achieved this goal or we didn't achieve this goal. And I think, I know that because of this big push towards being ethical in this industry, there's a fair amount of just kind of blanket statements. And if you can figure out a way to be accountable to the measures that you've chosen to take, I think that builds a lot of trust with customers. And it also just helps you know what your impact is, because it can get really just kind of, overwhelming, and you can be kind of adrift in all this information, and it's a moving target and on and on. So I think being really clear with yourself and having measurables that you update, whether it's annually or what, is a good place to start.
Thank you so much, Molly. And over to you, Bav, to give your take on that.
Well, I think, for new brands or existing brands, it's about, just like what Molly said, don't be overwhelmed. There's sustainability is such a broad spectrum. So, start and focus on what you want your purpose project to be focused on, and then, build your bricks. and try and focus on, you know, another element. So maybe at the beginning it will be, you know, circular design, not so much the materials, or not so much, you know, the transparent production chain. But if you start with one, it will automatically have a trickle effect and allow you to focus on the next phase. And then, you know, within my business, it's all about, you know, self-evaluating. So, you know, find organizations that can help evaluate your business and provide you with guidelines into, you know, how you can improve, what steps you need to make, and be and it's okay to fail. You know, it's all about your failure will, and if you tell people about your failures, it will make sure that, you know, help them to not make the same mistakes. So just be honest with yourself, be honest with, you know, the people around you, and most of all, make sure you build good, wholesome relationships. You know, this is going to be the key. Treat people, treat your suppliers, treat your team how you would want to be treated. I mean, respect has been like the mantra right from the beginning. And if it wasn't for the suppliers that I've, you know, built relationships right from the beginning, I wouldn't even have a brand. And you can, it's nice to see, you know, also the development, not just the supplies seeing how me, you know, being a small self-funded brand has developed, but also seeing how my supplies have progressed as well. And that can give you the courage and the willpower to, you know, move forward. Because when you go to them, you know, during the trade fairs, and at the beginning you'd say, you know, what sustainable fabrics do you have? And they'd show you maybe, you know, 3 samples, and you're like, okay, I have to build my whole collection just, you know, with these 3 samples. And now you can't, now I go and they're like, you know, 30 items, you know, in a range of different colors. And it's rewarding for me to see how they've progressed, just like how it's rewarding for them to see, you know, we believed in this small brand and we've seen the progression, you know, what she's done, you know, at a time when sustainability was not a buzzword. It was definitely not a trend word.
So even asking the questions in a way at that point probably drove change. So I'm going to pass to Laurent, who's going to take us into the break.
Thank you so much, Tamsin. And again, thank you so much for everybody who contributed to this session. I was essentially inspired by 3 points that I just wrote down while I was listening to everybody involved. First and foremost, sustainability. There is a really big difference between living sustainability as a sort of PR measure, but then really having its sustainability ingrained within your culture. And having it ingrained in your culture, I think, is something that all of our speakers really share. Because then in the end, when you talk about the price of a garment, it's not really just the price of the garment itself, but what you also pay for is living standards, and you pay for, again, sustainable practices. Then switching from wholesale to DTC, and what that sort of opens up the opportunity to really create a more, let's say, intense conversation with your customer. And finally, the creating of meaningful impact for local communities, and not just honoring, but also enabling their talent.